Hi, I'm Jennifer Manson, the flow writer. I write my own books and I also work with clients on their books and help them to write, help them to edit, and help them to get themselves published. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got into ghostwriting and what that experience was like. So, what happened for me was that I was invited by someone I met at a business event to attend the National Speakers Association chapter in Christchurch in New Zealand. And I loved it. I loved it. I walked into a room of maybe 30 people who were all people who spoke professionally in their career. And it was fantastic. They were all people who knew a lot, who were enthusiastic about what they did in life. And I came home afterwards. I have a bit of a tendency when I get talking to someone to get excited about what they do, what they know, and start to talk rather than listen. So I came home. I think it was the second time I'd been. And I was thinking, how could I encourage myself to stop talking myself and listen to what all these incredibly knowledgeable people had to say? So I asked myself that question as I went to sleep that night, and I woke up in the morning with this idea of, if I were a professional interviewer, then people would pay me to be quiet and listen to what they had to say. So the next time I went along, I said, I'm starting this new idea, this new business as a professional interviewer. And I had a lot of takers from that group because they're people who are amazing at talking, and to have a professional audience was something they were really interested in. So I did all kinds of interviewing. I did kind of interview that people could use to give their clients to be able to transfer their knowledge to their clients. I did some on-stage interviewing with, particularly with somebody who was asked to speak, but as a professional speaker, they would spend a lot of time preparing a talk. Whereas if they're interviewed on stage, then that's much less of an overhead for them. So we had a 40-minute conversation to talk about what they would like to cover in the interview, and then I interviewed them on stage, asked them the questions, and they could just respond in the moment without having to do that large amount of preparation. So the next stage was quite soon after that, I had the opportunity to move to France. And when I got to France, I was thinking about, what am I going to do here? I'd left my business behind in New Zealand, and I wanted to start something new. So I worked with a mentor, Lucy Whittington, who's absolutely amazing. She's written a book called Find Your Thing, which she works with people to help them work out what it is that they do, what it is that they have to contribute to the world. And she said, look, you've got all this ability to write, you have this ability to interview, you've got a really good way with people, so why don't you try ghostwriting? So that was how I got into it. And since then I've worked on, I guess, maybe 25, 30 books with clients at different levels. So everything from the full kind of, what is it you want to say in your book, get out the structure, and then interview them and edit and get them to the point where they're ready to publish, right through to somebody's written something and they would, or they're about to write and they want a coach to take them through that process of writing, somebody to talk to once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, about where they're up to in their process and what they should do next. The way that I found my clients for that business was, it was something I stumbled on, which I use in other contexts now, which was, I would say to people, I'm a ghost writer and I help people write books, and they would say, oh, I've always wanted to write something, or they know somebody who's always wanted to write a book. And so I set up a thing where I would do a 45-minute call with anybody who was keen to write their own book. And my intention for that call was not to generate business for myself, as a first thought. The intention for that call was, by the end of it, they would know what their next step was to writing their book, and whether that was working with me or whether it wasn't. If it was to work with me, then I would consider whether that was a project that I was excited to take on at that time. And if it was, I'd say, look, I'd love to work with you, and we would work out how we would stage that, how that would work for them, what the process, how I could adapt the process that I had developed to suit them, to suit their budget, to suit their timeline. And then we would go from there. If it was just, sometimes somebody wanted to write a children's book, and I would say to them, look, the best thing you can do is tell this story over and over again to your children and get them to tell you what's exciting and get their feedback. until it's honed into a shape that really is the story at its best. And then that would often be their next step. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe that's enough to say right at this moment. If that's something that you're curious about, if it's something that you would like to talk to me about, you'll find my contact details in the description below. And if it's something that you think that you would like to do as work for yourself, there really is something about working with an expert, working with somebody who really knows their subject. It was fantastic, when you're speaking with an expert. If it's something that you would you would want to hire their services, then it can cost quite a significant amount of money for them to tell you a small amount of what you know. The thing I loved about ghostwriting is that they paid me to tell me everything they knew, and I loved that experience of learning from them, of learning a different domain of knowledge, and doing that in such the kind of thorough way that happens when you are taking their words and forming them into somewhere probably between a 25,000, 60,000, maybe even 80,000 word book. You really get to know what they know in some level of depth. So I'm going to stop there. I will go on to talk about other ways in which interviewing can be really rewarding in life. So thanks for tuning in. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, then you could maybe write down as you're writing exercise how you would love to integrate that into your life. And if you do have a book that you're working on or that you would love to write, how how my kind of description of how I work with people has tuned in with how you were thinking of approaching the project. And if you would love a book coach and love somebody to help you through that process, I would love to be involved in that. So get in touch. Thanks very much, and thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.